Tasha, welcome and thank you so much for coming on with us.
Oh, thanks, Aaron. My pleasure.
So I guess we have spent a lot of time talking about Paul St-Pierre Plamondon. I had a chance to speak to him earlier in the afternoon, and I'm still, to some degree, scratching my head trying to figure out why it was important today for the PQ to come out and let everybody know, don't worry, you can vote PQ and there won't be a referendum held until Donald Trump is no longer president in 2029. So give me your reaction to that.
Well, isn't it smart? It really does take the issue off the table for this election. It makes it a non-issue, and I am not surprised because polling shows that two-thirds of Quebecers say no. In fact, 69%, the last one I saw, and that actually is including two-thirds of Francophones. That's the real big surprise, too, in polling. So he knows the issue has no traction, and he knows that the Liberals in particular will make hay with it. So he's removing it from the equation. I mean, Donald Trump, Aaron, he could be there who knows how long, right? We think he'll be gone in 2029, but you never know. And it's just, it's very convenient in my view. Pretty clever. Yeah.
See, I asked the question of him, and I'm not going to play it back now. We were going to air that interview just after 5:30. It seemed to me once I read this, Tasha, and I thought to myself, well, okay, he's there till Jan of 2029. Donald Trump's 80. His health is not necessarily very good. There's a possibility, right, as a hypothetical, he could conceivably die in office. What would happen then? And PSPP didn't really have an answer for that.
Well, maybe he'll say J.D. Vance is too uncertain.
Great.
And then, I don't know. But it's a good question to ask. You never know what happens. You never do know what happens. And so I think, though, the fact he's doing this, what's interesting is Donald Trump has become the excuse, the reason, a crutch for so many politicians and so many things to use. It's not my fault. It's the Donald's fault. So it doesn't surprise me, though, because, look, right now the PQ is polling at a minority government status. They would like to boost that to a majority. They couldn't have a referendum, by the way, if they don't have a majority, because they won't get the other parties to agree. So in a way, it's a complete out, right? If he's in a minority situation, he'd have his hands tied, but he'd like a majority. So if he gets that now, then he can still say, I'm not going to have a referendum. And people will worry less. He might, try and make inroads. He was trying to make inroads even with the Anglophone vote, which is interesting. Good luck there, I say, but you never know.
Yeah, good luck indeed. All right, let me move on and talk about the other story we spent a lot of time this week talking about. Countdown clock is on midnight tonight. This threatened U.S. tariff deal against Canada could, in fact, go forward, although we're reporting now that Politico is saying there is a deal and it's sitting on Donald Trump's desk. You have an update on that? Do you know what's going on?
I know no more than Politico.
Okay.
I read that too. I was casting about, I'm watching, news feeds and X to see what the latest noises are on this. That is the latest noise I've heard, that there is a deal on his desk, whether he signs it in time or not. But the idea is that it would stave off the 50% duties, and there would be some kind of, perhaps, Canada might drop certain retaliatory measures. We know the Americans don't like our booze ban. We are looking for a better deal on autos. They want a better deal on dairy. A lot of things. No one's going to dismantle supply management tomorrow, but, we could make a concession in terms of quotas. That is a possibility. That I don't think would be as damaging to the Liberals because that by-election, as we know, is coming up in about a week in Quebec. But I think, cross our fingers that Trump signs this or that he tacos, as Trump always chickens out, because we don't want those 50% tariffs. They would be terrible for us.
I will just, point out, and I thought I saw this earlier as well, this idea of Mark Carney meeting with Donald Trump. We thought it might have happened yesterday. I'm not sure that it happened today, but it seems, and I keep seeing this pushed over through some of these press releases, or at least, updates, there will be at some point a meeting between Carney and Donald Trump before this is signed. Do we know that?
We don't know that. We do know they spoke. Carney did say they spoke on Monday. Getting it done by midnight tonight, a meeting. I don't know where that'd be a pretty late meeting, maybe a late drink somewhere, but Donald Trump doesn't actually drink, so
exactly.
That wouldn't happen either. I don't honestly know if that would be a prerequisite. As long as there's as long as the deal is signed, sure, they could meet potentially after, because this isn't the end of the story. This is just to deal with this hiccup. We still have the bigger negotiation of Kuzma, and that would probably require some kind of meeting of the two of them at some point.
All right. And the final thing I want to bring up today, you wrote in your column in the National Post, you're asking the question, when will the Conservative Party figure out a path back to power? This comes, I guess, in the wake earlier in the week, or was it last week, when some individual Conservative Party members basically openly expressed reservations about Pierre Poilievre as the person to lead them into the next election. So what are you seeing here?
Well, we've been seeing this all summer. We've been seeing this. In fact, Poilievre, it's sort of an own goal at the Calgary Stampede when he criticized organizers for one of the candidates in BC for the Conservative leadership and called them, liberal lobbyists from the East. These are the same people that were working in Ontario, Corey Tenike and others, for the Conservatives and the Conservative movement and party for decades. It did not go over well. There's also criticism because the polls show, even today, there's a new Nanos poll, Liberals are at 45.7%, Conservatives 28.5%. That's a heck of a gap. So people are scared for their ridings. They worry. The election is likely still a couple years away, but it's a legitimate fear if that's what you're doing with your life and you want to stay there. The problem is there's no heir apparent. And that the polls show as well. In fact, Stephen Harper was seen as the most likely Conservative leader to beat Mark Carney. And I don't think he wants his job back. So that's not going to work.
So what do you see as the future for Pierre Poilievre within this party? Is there one?
I think there is one if he can start to get some traction in the polls. I think the polls, and the only way to do that is to address the elephant in the room. It is not to fight the last election where he fought it on affordability and he fought it on the sort of Canada's broken kind of narrative. Because, like I say, Carney is not the wrecking ball. Trump is seen as the wrecking ball. He has to present an alternative vision of how the Conservatives would build Canada that is better than what Carney is offering. And Carney is offering a very, let's build infrastructure, let's major projects. It's a very centralized vision. It comes from Ottawa. The major projects office is there. The money comes from Ottawa. All of it is very centrally controlled. A lot of people don't necessarily feel that's the best way to throw money from this. Local control might be better. There's options for him to say, this isn't the best way forward. Here's what I propose. But he has to propose an alternative to the anti-Trump that Carney has. If he doesn't address that, then I don't think he's going to be sticking around.
And do you see him addressing that? I mean, does he have that within him to actually do that?
Well, he does have certain ideas. He comes out with things saying, how Canada should address this or negotiate that. But the point is, it's not simple ideas, one, here and there. It has to be a coherent vision of this is what the Conservatives stand for. This is why it is better. I haven't heard that yet. And I think it is the kind of heavy lift that, it would be best to do that when people are paying attention. So this fall when Parliament resumes. And when there are other elections going on, then people will be paying more attention to politics.
I would ask one other thing, and this was brought up, I guess, last week when we first started hearing about these other, Conservatives who just openly, came out and said, I'm not sure he's the guy. Is there someone else within the federal Conservative Party that people could look to say, you know what, I think he's the guy? Because I don't know who that would be.
I don't know either. I mean, there are people, I think, who would covet the role. Jamil Javani is someone who would take the party further right on issues, and he's certainly been very vocal. He went to the States himself. As we know, that was quite controversial within the party itself. Melissa Lantsman, who's the deputy leader, she's also ambitious and has been a very loyal soldier to Poilievre. He hasn't given her as much play as I think he did about a year and a bit ago, maybe because he senses she's also, well-liked and well-seen. But I'm not sure if they don't rise to the status of a Harper. They don't rise to the status of a Jason Kenney. They don't, they're not household names, and they don't have that as much experience. So I think the problem is that the big names, the big people, are also not seen as people who could take the party right now against Carney. Is like, Carney's got the honeymoon going on. He's still, I think, going to have possibly another election in him. And people don't want to risk their jobs and livelihoods to go and lead a party and sit in opposition.
Yeah, exactly. And imagine that something works out in this trade deal and Carney can sit back and say, look what I managed to get for Canada. That'd just make it that much worse for the Conservatives, right?
Absolutely. And this is the thing. I mean, it's not the Conservatives want him to fail because they don't want Canada to fail. But, I think that's what they're hoping in a sense, in a way, is that this doesn't work and he doesn't deliver. And then the tide starts to turn.
Right.
I don't even know if that would fully matter because Canadians are so angry with Trump that they'll still give Carney a pass, at least I think this year. We'll see next year maybe if things still drag on and the economy suffers. That's where I think people will start to question things.
We leave it at that. Tasha, great to have you on. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Aaron. Have a great afternoon.
Take care. You too. Tasha Kheiriddin from the National Post.
Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll. One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them.
It's only love, and that's all. Bryan Adams Radio. I'm coming back to you. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app.
Hey everybody, how are you tonight? Sounds great.